The smell of diesel fuel and burning rubber was still thick in my garage when she marched across my lawn like she owned the deed to my property. There I stood, Master Sergeant Thomas Tank Richardson, retired Army Corps of Engineers, grease under my fingernails, staring at the woman who just had my 1969 Camaro SS towed from my own driveway. The sheer audacity made my jaw clench so hard I thought my molars might crack. But Diana Pemberton Walsh had no idea what kind of war she'd just declared. See, when you mess with a combat engineer's sanctuary, you better pray he doesn't have the skills to dismantle your entire operation, bolt by bolt. And sweetheart, I was about to turn her precious HOA into a smoking crater of federal violations with a side of criminal conspiracy charges. This suburban dictator thought destroying my life's work would break me. Instead, it fired up an engine of revenge that would consume her entire corrupt empire. Every illegal fine, every fabricated violation, every intimidation tactic against my fellow veterans, I had it all documented in military precision. What would you do if your destroyer just handed themselves to you on a silver legal platter? Where are you watching from? Because this revenge gets tactical. 8 months before my garage became a crime scene, I was Master Sergeant Thomas Richardson, 22 years Army Corps of Engineers, recently retired to Patriot Hill Subdivision outside Colorado Springs. My late wife Sarah had picked out our modest ranch home specifically for its 3-car garage where I could finally restore the muscle cars I dreamed about during deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. The 1969 Camaro SS had been my obsession since high school. Rally green metallic with white racing stripes, 396 big block engine that could wake the dead and rattle windows 3 blocks away. Patriot Hills used to be a blue-collar neighborhood where military families raised kids and retired sergeants tinkered with engines on Sunday afternoons. The kind of place where neighbors borrowed tools and helped each other move furniture. Then the California money invaded. Suddenly, ranch homes were getting demolished for modern farmhouse McMansions with 3-car garages nobody used because their Tesla charged in the driveway. Enter the self-appointed queen of this gentrification army, Diana Pemberton Walsh. Picture every entitled suburban nightmare rolled into one perfectly spray-tanned package. 42 years old, driving a white Range Rover that cost more than I made in 6 months, always clutching some $25 organic coffee while explaining why everyone else's lifestyle choices were destroying property values. She'd moved in 18 months ago with her investment banker husband, immediately announcing plans to elevate Patriot Hills to its full potential. Translation: eliminate the undesirables. My first encounter with Diana happened while I was installing a new transmission in the Camaro. The sweet rumble of American muscle mixed with the metallic clink of tools as I worked in my open garage. 22 years of Army discipline had taught me to maintain equipment properly, every socket in its place, every fluid checked twice, every restoration done to factory specifications. The sharp click of designer heels on asphalt announced her arrival. "Excuse me, you must be the new neighbor," she said, not bothering with introductions or pleasantries. "I'm Diana, HOA President. We have a situation." "Master Sergeant Richardson," I corrected, wiping motor oil from my hands with deliberate calm. "Ma'am?" "Right, the veteran." She pronounced my service like it was a communicable disease. Out came the pink tablet, clearly her weapon of choice for documenting neighborhood violations. The electronic beeping of her measurements app cut through the afternoon quiet like incoming artillery. She photographed my garage setup with theatrical precision, lips pursed in manufactured disapproval. Automotive repair activities are prohibited in residential areas. That's a $750 violation plus immediate cessation of all mechanical work. I stood slowly, vertebrae popping from 2 decades of carrying combat gear and sleepless nights in desert outposts. "Show me that regulation, ma'am." Her manicured fingers swiped through digital documents with practiced efficiency. 5 minutes of searching produced nothing because the regulation didn't exist. My garage was private property, my work was personal restoration, and I'd specifically checked HOA bylaws before moving in. "Well," she huffed, face reddening under her foundation, "we'll see about that, Sergeant. Community standards exist for a reason." The venom in her voice revealed this wasn't about automotive work. This was about something deeper. That evening, over a beer and Sarah's favorite leftovers, I pulled up county records on my laptop. Military intelligence training paid off immediately. Diana's husband, Marcus Walsh, owned Mountain Peak Property Development, the company that had bought and demolished 6 houses in our neighborhood over the past year. Properties they'd purchased for $200,000 and replaced with $800,000 modern farmhouses. But here's where it got interesting. 3 years ago, Mountain Peak had applied for commercial development permits to build a strip mall where my block currently stood. The city council had rejected their proposal based on neighborhood opposition led by the existing HOA board. Old-timers like Frank Martinez, a Vietnam vet who'd lived here since 1985. Diana hadn't moved here to improve the neighborhood. She'd infiltrated the HOA to eliminate opposition to her husband's commercial development plans. My garage wasn't violating community standards. It was standing in the way of a shopping center. The woman had made a critical error. She'd targeted a man who'd spent 2 decades dismantling enemy fortifications and infrastructure. Someone who'd learned explosive ordnance disposal in places where mistakes meant death. A person with military precision, unlimited patience, and complete understanding of how bureaucratic systems could be weaponized by someone who knew every regulation and loophole. The rough texture of my Camaro's steering wheel under my palm reminded me why I'd built this sanctuary. Not just to restore cars, but to honor Sarah's memory in the garage she'd helped me design. Our dream workshop where we'd planned to spend retirement surrounded by American muscle and shared memories. Diana Pemberton Walsh had just declared war on a Master Sergeant's memorial to his fallen wife. In the Army, we had a technical term for that level of tactical stupidity: target acquired. She had no idea what kind of ordnance she'd just triggered. Within 10 days, Diana launched what could only be described as psychological warfare disguised as community improvement. The woman had clearly studied every petty dictator's manual and decided to turn my retirement into her personal stress testing laboratory. The certified letters started arriving like clockwork. Thick manila envelopes that made my mail carrier apologize. 9 pieces of registered mail in 2 weeks, each more absurd than the last. Violation notice number 1, unapproved outdoor storage. The offense, my garden hose, neatly coiled on its designated hook next to the garage door. Apparently, visible utility storage violated Patriot Hill's clean aesthetic standards. Violation notice number 2, non-regulation landscape modifications. My offense, replacing 3 dead shrubs with drought-resistant native plants. Suddenly, water conservation was disrupting neighborhood uniformity. But the one that made my hands shake with rage, violation notice number 3, inappropriate memorial displays. Sarah's memorial bench, a simple wooden seat beside her favorite rose garden, was creating emotional distress for community members. The woman was attacking my wife's memory. Each letter demanded fines between $500 and $200, threatening liens and legal action. The expensive letterhead probably cost more than most violations themselves. Here's where 22 years of military training paid off. During my deployment to Iraq, I'd studied local government regulations to coordinate with civilian contractors. These letters contained more legal holes than a Baghdad marketplace after an IED explosion. Real HOA fines must follow due process, cite actual bylaw violations, and provide appeal procedures. Diana's notices referenced non-existent regulations and failed to include mandatory hearing rights. Time for military precision payback. I spent 5 evenings in Sarah's home office, surrounded by her gardening books and the lingering scent of her favorite lavender candles, building my counteroffensive. Filed formal complaints with the Colorado Real Estate Commission detailing Diana's procedural violations. Photographed my property from every angle using military documentation standards. Created spreadsheets tracking her illegal fine patterns with the same precision I'd used for explosive ordnance inventories. But Diana wasn't finished with amateur tactics. On Thursday morning, while I was downtown at the VA for my quarterly checkup, my new security cameras captured pure criminal stupidity in high definition. Diana arrived with backup forces, her interior designer, a skeletal woman in all-black designer clothes, and her personal attorney, apparently moonlighting as a property inspector. They spent 3 hours manufacturing evidence for non-existent violations. The designer pointed dramatically at Sarah's rose garden like 15 years of careful cultivation had personally insulted her minimalist sensibilities. The attorney, clearly more familiar with corporate law than property regulations, took photographs on official-looking equipment. I watched the footage that evening with mounting fury. These people were creating fraudulent documentation to support fraudulent fines. In the Army, we called this conspiracy to commit fraud. Then Frank Martinez knocked on my door, his Vietnam veteran's cap slightly askew as he spoke in worried whispers. "Tank, this Diana woman's been systematically targeting military families. Remember the Hendersons? Forced them to remove their son's Purple Heart Memorial flag display, called it excessive patriotic imagery, spent $500 in fines before they finally sold and moved to Texas. My combat instincts activated. What else, Frank? Young Marine down the street got fined for his motorcycle, same bike he rode back from his 3rd deployment. She claimed excessive noise ordinance, but it's stock exhaust. Kids struggling with PTSD, and now this woman's adding financial stress to his recovery." The pattern crystallized, like intelligence reports falling into place during mission planning. Diana wasn't just targeting me. She was running systematic harassment against military families who didn't fit her suburban country club fantasy. Veterans with visible disabilities, families with memorial displays, active duty personnel with government-issued vehicles, and retired NCOs who actually used their garages for intended purposes. This was discrimination wrapped in HOA bureaucracy, backed by fraudulent documentation and targeting Americans who'd served their country. I'd stumbled into the middle of a much larger criminal enterprise that made my automotive violation look like a parking ticket. The scratching sound of my pen documenting these revelations filled Sarah's quiet office. She'd always said good strategy was like engineering. Measure twice, cut once, and make sure your demolition is precise enough to bring down exactly what you're targeting. I was about to perform controlled demolition on Diana Pemberton Walsh's little kingdom of veteran harassment. She'd made the classic mistake of targeting someone who understood exactly how to dismantle hostile operations using the same bureaucratic systems she'd been weaponizing against American heroes. Sarah used to joke that engineers were just soldiers with slide rules and permanent solutions to temporary problems. Time to show this HOA dictator what happens when you declare war on someone who builds explosives for a living. Diana's next move crossed the line from harassment into federal crime territory. The woman had apparently decided that if manufactured violations weren't working, actual destruction of property might send a stronger message. She struck while I was at Fort Carson for a retirement ceremony, honoring my old unit commander. My military-grade security system captured every criminal second of her emergency safety inspection, a legal authority that existed only in her delusional imagination. There she was, bold as brass in designer athleisure, strutting through my garage like she'd been issued keys by the Pentagon, pink tablet in hand, photographing everything from angles that would embarrass surveillance specialists. The audacity peaked when she actually climbed under my Camaro with her phone, documenting unsafe mechanical modifications that existed only in her imagination. But Diana's criminal stupidity reached nuclear levels when she deliberately sabotaged my work. The security footage showed her disconnecting electrical connections, loosening engine mounts, and removing safety equipment I'd carefully installed during restoration. When I returned that evening, exhausted from military ceremonies and emotional goodbyes to fellow veterans, I found my sanctuary violated and my worst nightmare realized. My Camaro was destroyed, not damaged, systematically sabotaged. Electrical systems fried, engine mounts loosened to dangerous levels, brake lines disconnected. 22 years of careful restoration work ruined by deliberate criminal vandalism. But the discovery that made my blood freeze was finding my Purple Heart missing from Sarah's memorial display case. This wasn't harassment anymore. This was desecration of military honors earned in combat. The panic hit like incoming mortar fire. I spent 4 hours documenting damage with military precision, photographing every severed wire and loosened bolt. My training in explosive ordnance disposal had taught me to analyze sabotage patterns. This wasn't random vandalism. It was systematic destruction designed to cause maximum psychological and financial damage. Frank Martinez organized a veteran response team faster than a special forces deployment. Within hours, retired soldiers, Marines, and airmen arrived with tools, expertise, and righteous fury that made local police nervous. "Tank, we've got your six," said Bobby Chen, former Marine mechanic who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Nobody attacks a brother's memorial and walks away clean. The community response was overwhelming. Donations poured in not just for car restoration, but for legal fees to destroy Diana's criminal enterprise. Justice for Tank exploded across veteran social media networks. 3 law firms offered pro bono services specializing in civil rights violations. Most importantly, 8 more military families came forward with similar horror stories. Elderly Korean War veteran forced to remove his flag display. Young Army wife fined into bankruptcy for her husband's deployment-issued vehicle, a pattern of targeting anyone who'd worn the uniform in service to America. But the real game changer came from my research into federal veterans protection laws. Buried in recent legislation, I'd found beautiful legal ammunition. Harassment of veterans based on military service carried the same penalties as hate crimes. Plus, destruction of military honors constituted federal property damage if those honors were government-issued. Diana's crew hadn't just committed vandalism. They'd violated federal laws protecting veterans from discrimination and destroyed government property in the process. That evening, I sat in Sarah's office with Frank and Bobby, surrounded by evidence that would end Diana's reign of terror permanently. My restored security footage, financial records of her illegal fines, and witness statements from 8 military families painted a picture of systematic federal crimes. The soft sound of my keyboard clicking as I drafted complaints to the FBI, Department of Veterans Affairs, and Colorado Attorney General mixed with the distant rumble of Harleys as the local VFW chapter arrived for solidarity patrols. Sarah used to say that engineers didn't just build things, they built things that lasted longer than the problems they solved. Time to show this suburban terrorist what happens when you attack American veterans who've spent careers solving hostile problems permanently. She'd escalated from civil violations to federal hate crimes. My response would be overwhelming. Diana's desperation reached thermonuclear levels when she realized her criminal vandalism had backfired into federal charges. So naturally, she decided to destroy my military career before I could destroy her criminal empire. The complaint hit my mailbox via certified mail on Tuesday morning. Official Department of the Army letterhead that made my coffee taste like desert sand. Diana's allegations read like enemy propaganda. Master Sergeant Richardson abuses veteran status to intimidate law-abiding civilians, weaponizing military connections for personal vendettas that threaten community safety and violate his oath of service. The supporting evidence was criminal in its creativity. Doctored photographs showing my garage as some kind of neighborhood hazard, falsified witness statements claiming I'd threatened civilians, and timestamps that would make military intelligence weep with laughter. But Diana's nuclear option? She'd leaked everything to anti-military blogs that opposed veteran benefits. Within hours, I was trending as Stolen Valor Sergeant terrorizes patriots. Comment sections exploded with keyboard warriors demanding my court-martial, discharge review, and creative suggestions about what should happen to fake soldiers who hate America. For 72 hours, I watched 22 years of honorable service get shredded by people who couldn't spell Afghanistan, but somehow understood military law better than career NCOs. Then my salvation arrived in the form of a silver-haired man carrying fresh coffee and wearing a 1st Armored Division cap. Colonel Patricia Pat Williams, retwined, looked like everyone's retired teacher, sensible cardigan, orthopedic shoes, hands that trembled slightly with age. What she didn't look like was a 30-year military police officer who'd specialized in criminal investigations and had apparently been conducting surveillance on Diana for months. "Sergeant, I think you need to see this," she said, settling into Sarah's chair with the calm confidence of someone used to delivering life-changing intelligence. Pat spread photographs across my kitchen table like battlefield maps. Meet Diana Walsh of Sacramento, California. 3 insurance fraud convictions, 2 identity theft charges, and 1 federal conspiracy conviction. All under different names, all targeting veteran communities. My military training kicked in. Pattern recognition like reading enemy movements. She's done this before. Textbook operation. Target established military communities, create conflicts to justify harassment, drain resources before investigations expose her criminal history. Pat's MP instincts were surgeon sharp despite retirement. But here's the beautiful part. She filed her current HOA application under false identity. Her real name is Dana Wilkins, federal parolee who violated probation by moving states without permission. That's automatic federal arrest warrant. The documents Pat produced made my combat engineer heart sing. Diana's current identity was completely fabricated. Her HOA presidency was obtained through document fraud. Her husband's development company was licensed under false information that would make federal prosecutors dance with joy. She's not harassing veterans because of property values, Pat continued, organizing evidence with military precision. You're the cover operation. Keep everyone focused on HOA drama while she embezzles community funds and sets up the next real estate scam. The revelation hit like improvised explosive device detonation. This wasn't personal harassment. It was criminal misdirection. While I'd been fighting automotive violations, Diana had been draining HOA emergency funds and preparing property fraud that would devastate the entire veteran community. Pat handed me a manila folder thick enough to stop shrapnel. Mountain Peak Development filed bankruptcy last month. Their contractor licenses were suspended for tax evasion. The HOA presidency was never about community improvement. It was about accessing community funds and property records for criminal use. My harassment wasn't random targeting. It was professional distraction, keeping a trained combat engineer busy with petty disputes while she systematically robbed our community and prepared federal crimes. But Pat's final revelation made my blood freeze solid. She's already filed preliminary insurance claims for escalating neighborhood safety concerns and developing community conflicts. Your garage isn't just a target tank. It's scheduled to be evidence in her next insurance fraud scheme. That evening, I sat surrounded by evidence that transformed my personal nightmare into a federal RICO case. Bank records showing $680,000 missing from HOA emergency funds, insurance applications containing enough lies to trigger multiple felony charges, a pattern of targeting military families that screamed federal civil rights violations. Diana hadn't picked me because I violated her aesthetic standards. She'd chosen me because destroying a decorated veteran created perfect cover for systematic theft and fraud preparation. But in her criminal arrogance, she'd made one catastrophic miscalculation. Instead of targeting helpless civilians, she decided to run federal crimes against someone who understood exactly how to coordinate multi-agency takedowns using every resource in the federal arsenal. The soft glow of my computer screen illuminated Sarah's office as I began drafting communications to federal prosecutors who specialized in organized crime and veteran rights violations. My wife always said that good engineering wasn't just about building things that worked. It was about building things that eliminated problems permanently. Diana Wilkins was about to learn that running federal scams while targeting American veterans wasn't just stupid, it was life sentence stupid. Time to show this criminal what federal justice looked like when it was personal, permanent, and delivered with military precision. The manila envelope Pat slid across my kitchen table felt heavier than my combat gear. Inside were photographs that made my hands shake and my MP training scream in recognition of familiar patterns. "Tank, what I'm about to show you changes everything," Pat said, her voice carrying the weight of 3 decades investigating military crimes. Diana Wilkins is a federal fugitive operating a veteran-targeting crime syndicate. The first photo showed a California driver's license from 2019, Dana Wilkins with Diana's face smiling back at me. The second revealed Beth Walsh from Nevada. Same woman, different identity. The third made my coffee mug slip from numb fingers. Denise Martinez from Texas, dated 2015, with a federal prisoner ID number stamped across the bottom. "She's a professional veteran community destroyer," Pat explained, organizing evidence with surgical precision. 6 states, 11 identities, systematic targeting of military families followed by property fraud and insurance scams. She's stolen over $8 million in the past decade. My combat training kicked in, but the personal horror made my voice crack. How many families has she destroyed? 47 confirmed veteran families driven from their homes. Always the same pattern. Target established military communities, create harassment campaigns against service members and families, embezzle community funds, then manipulate property values for development fraud. Pat's MP instincts were razor sharp, despite retirement. In San Antonio, 12 military families were forced out before the community center mysteriously caught fire. Phoenix lost 9 veteran families to stress-related relocations during her reign of terror. The next document made my blood freeze solid. Architectural plans for my neighborhood obtained through Mountain Peak's contractor database marked with detailed notes about veteran-owned properties, disability accommodations, and optimal harassment pressure points. "She's been planning to destroy your community since day one," Pat said quietly. "Your garage was never the problem. Your military service made you the perfect target for creating community conflict while she prepared systematic property fraud." My hands shook as I traced Sarah's memorial garden marked in the margins as emotional manipulation opportunity. The woman had turned my wife's memory into her criminal strategy, but Pat's final revelation shattered every assumption I'd made about this case. She's not just a criminal, Tank, she's operating under stolen veteran identities while running scams specifically targeting military communities. Dana Wilkins stole the identity of Lieutenant Colonel Diana Walsh, killed in Afghanistan in 2012. The implications hit like incoming artillery. This woman was using a fallen officer's identity to commit crimes against the exact communities that officer had died protecting. The identity theft alone carried federal minimum sentences, but using a KIA's identity to target veterans was a level of evil that demanded maximum justice. The stolen valor violations carry 10-year federal minimums, Pat continued. Add the multi-state veteran targeting conspiracy, identity theft of deceased military personnel, and now destruction of a Purple Heart recipient's memorial. She's looking at life without parole, in federal maximum security. I stared at photographs of families she'd destroyed, communities she'd devastated, veteran families who'd lost homes due to her systematic harassment campaigns. My personal nightmare was just the latest chapter in a decade-long federal crime spree targeting Americans who'd served their country. The musty smell of old case files mixed with the bitter taste of betrayal as I realized the scope of Diana's criminal enterprise. She hadn't targeted me because of garage activities. She'd researched my military service, my wife's death, my financial situation, and my emotional vulnerabilities to create the perfect victim profile for maximum community disruption. But in her criminal arrogance, she'd made one catastrophic miscalculation. She'd chosen to run federal crimes against someone who understood exactly how to coordinate multi-jurisdictional prosecutions with every federal agency from FBI to military police to Veterans Affairs. The soft sound of my secure phone ringing interrupted my planning. "Master Sergeant Richardson? This is Agent Sarah Martinez, FBI Veterans Crimes Task Force. We've been monitoring your situation. Are you available for coordination meeting tomorrow at 800 hours? Time to show this professional predator what federal justice looked like when it was personal, permanent, and delivered with overwhelming military precision. My kitchen transformed into a federal command center faster than a combat deployment. By Thursday evening, Pat, Frank, Bobby, and FBI Agent Martinez sat around Sarah's table like an avenging army planning biblical justice, surrounded by evidence boxes that could bury Diana's criminal empire deeper than an Afghanistan bunker. Agent Sarah Martinez was a legal predator in a professional suit, former JAG officer turned federal prosecutor who'd never lost a veteran rights case and had apparently been tracking Diana's criminal network across multiple states. "Sergeant, we're not just prosecuting neighborhood harassment," Martinez announced, spreading color-coded organizational charts across my table like battle plans for Operation Overlord. "We're dismantling a decade-long federal crime syndicate that's destroyed 47 military families and stolen over $8 million. The smell of fresh legal documents mixed with Frank's pipe tobacco as we outlined our multi-phase assault. Federal prosecution, state charges, and veteran rights enforcement with enough firepower to level a small dictatorship. Martinez's strategy was surgical in its precision and overwhelming in its scope. Federal charges first. Identity theft of deceased military personnel carries 20-year minimums. Wire fraud for electronic HOA theft adds another 20. Stolen valor using KIA credentials, 15 years mandatory. RICO conspiracy for systematic veteran targeting, life without parole." She smiled like a predator spotting wounded prey. "We're talking about federal sentences that'll keep her locked up until archaeologists discover her remains." Pat coordinated federal agency involvement with retired MP efficiency that made current agents look like mall security. FBI organized crime, Veterans Affairs. Criminal investigation, military police interstate task force, Treasury financial crimes. They're all converging on this case like rangers hitting an objective. My role was evidence preservation and veteran community coordination, skills I'd perfected during 2 decades of military operations. During my Corps of Engineers training, I'd learned every aspect of federal contracting law after civilian contractors tried overcharging for base construction. HOA finances were completely transparent to federal investigation when properly requested through veteran rights legislation. Frank's Veteran Intelligence Network was our secret weapon. 40 years of military relationships had created an information web that would make CIA jealous. "Every family Diana's targeted is documenting everything," he reported, organizing witness statements with military precision. "The Martinez family is driving back from Texas with 23 witnesses. Young Marines keeping disability discrimination records that'll make federal prosecutors weep with joy." But our most satisfying preparation was the technical surveillance upgrade. Pat had transformed my modest security system into federal evidence collection machinery capable of recording crimes in courtroom quality detail with military specification equipment. "Here's the beautiful part," Pat explained while testing audio equipment that could capture conversations at ranges I'd used for perimeter security in Afghanistan. "Diana's actively committing fresh federal crimes while we're building the case. Every fraudulent fine, every harassment letter, every HOA fund transfer creates real-time evidence for federal prosecutors." Martinez handled immediate legal protection with the ruthless efficiency of someone who'd specialized in destroying organized crime. Emergency federal injunctions freeze all community accounts tomorrow morning. Criminal complaints hit 6 jurisdictions simultaneously. Civil rights violations filed with Justice Department for systematic targeting based on military service status. The financial implications were equally devastating for Diana's operation. Federal veterans protection laws required insurance companies to notify mortgage holders about fraud investigations targeting military families. Diana's scams would trigger audits of every policy in 3 states, potentially saving veteran families millions in fraudulent claims while destroying her credibility with every insurance company in America. Our emergency protocols acknowledged that cornered federal fugitives became desperately dangerous. Martinez had arranged protective surveillance for vulnerable veterans, including disabled families and those with small children. Federal cases had taught us that systematic fraudsters often escalated to violence when facing life sentences. By midnight, we'd constructed a legal machine designed for complete annihilation of Diana's criminal syndicate with maximum protection for every veteran she'd terrorized. The precision was beautiful, the scope was overwhelming, and the outcome was inevitable. "When we're finished," Martinez summarized with prosecutorial satisfaction, "Dana Wilkins will spend her remaining years in federal supermax. Mountain Peak Development gets liquidated for victim restitution. Every harassed veteran family receives compensation plus punitive damages. And we establish federal precedents protecting military communities nationwide from similar predators." The quiet hum of my upgraded security system mixed with the soft click of my keyboard as I drafted victim impact statements designed to make federal judges demand maximum sentences. Sarah always said that good engineering wasn't just about building things that worked, it was about building things that eliminated problems permanently. Tomorrow morning, federal fugitive Dana Wilkins would discover that targeting American veterans wasn't just catastrophically stupid, it was life sentence guaranteeing, legacy destroying, federal supermax ensuring stupid. Time to execute justice with extreme federal prejudice. Diana's response to our legal offensive proved she'd graduated from petty harassment to full-blown domestic terrorism. Her desperation was about to turn my neighborhood into a federal crime scene that would make prosecutors salivate for decades. The attack came Friday afternoon while I was at the VA hospital for my annual physical. Perfect alibi timing that Diana had clearly researched through my medical appointments. Information only available through illegal surveillance of veteran records. My military-grade security system captured every felonious second in evidence-quality high definition. At 13:47 hours, unmarked vehicles deployed a crew that moved with professional efficiency. These weren't contractors. They were destruction specialists wearing coveralls and carrying equipment designed for one purpose, turning my memorial garage into an insurance fire that would spread to neighboring veteran properties for maximum chaos. The cameras recorded them creating accelerant pathways around veteran memorials, installing unmarked incendiary devices near military displays, and positioning combustible materials in patterns that would guarantee fire spread toward other military families' homes. The precision was chilling, the criminal intent obvious, and the federal evidence quality absolutely devastating. But Diana's nuclear-level stupidity peaked when she arrived with local news crews claiming she'd received anonymous tips about dangerous fire hazards at veteran properties, threatening community safety. Military families often struggle with proper safety protocols, she told Channel 13 while standing directly over planted evidence of her own arson conspiracy. When PTSD affects judgment, innocent neighbors could pay the ultimate price. The offensive stereotyping was captured on federal surveillance equipment. The brass balls were impressive. The hate crime charges would be biblical. My phone erupted with calls from Pat's veteran surveillance network. Frank had photographed the entire crew from multiple concealed positions. Bobby had recorded license plates that would make federal lineups unnecessary. Even our postal worker, himself a Desert Storm veteran, had documented suspicious activity while delivering what might become the last mail my garage could ever receive. Then Fire Marshal Jake Morrison arrived for Diana's requested safety inspection. Morrison was a 25-year arson investigation veteran whose trained eye spotted planted evidence faster than a bomb tech spots tripwires. "Tank," he said quietly, kneeling beside obviously artificial accelerant patterns. "Someone's setting up your garage to burn. This isn't code violation. This is premeditated domestic terrorism targeting veterans." The chemical analysis would later reveal professionally applied military-grade accelerants. Incendiary devices violated 23 federal safety codes and bore fingerprints that matched Mountain Peak's contractor database. The placement patterns indicated expert knowledge of fire behavior, federal investigation procedures, and exactly how to create accidental blazes that would trigger maximum community terror. "Whoever planned this knows how to kill veterans and make it look like PTSD-related accident," Morrison continued, his professional disgust palpable. "These aren't random safety issues. This is systematic preparation for insurance fraud through veteran genocide." But Diana's desperation reached criminal crescendo when Morrison refused to condemn veteran properties based on planted evidence. Her response was captured on his department-issued body camera, a cash bribery attempt that transformed misdemeanor harassment into federal corruption charges carrying decade-long prison sentences. "Inspector, surely we can handle this situation efficiently for community safety," Diana said, sliding a thick envelope across his clipboard with practiced corruption. "Veterans sometimes need additional oversight, and I'm sure you understand the importance of proper documentation." Morrison's body camera recorded every incriminating word, every illegal gesture, and Diana's shocked expression when he informed her that bribing federal investigators was a terrorist act punishable by life imprisonment. The veteran community response was immediate and overwhelming. Pat's intelligence network revealed similar arson preparation at 7 other veteran properties, all owned by Purple Heart recipients or Gold Star families. Federal agents swarmed Patriot Hills like special forces hitting a high-value target, documenting systematic terrorism that made Diana's operation look like organized warfare against American heroes. Martinez's legal response was swift and merciless. Federal warrants issued within hours for Diana, her husband, and their entire criminal crew. Bank accounts frozen pending RICO investigation. Mountain Peak placed under federal asset forfeiture that would liquidate everything they'd stolen from veteran communities. But the most beautiful irony, Diana's planted evidence became forensic proof of premeditated domestic terrorism. Her bribery attempt created federal corruption charges that would stack with existing crimes like legal artillery shells falling toward life sentences. That evening, I sat surrounded by evidence that would guarantee federal supermax for everyone involved in Diana's criminal enterprise. The acrid smell of planted accelerant still hung in the air, but it no longer smelled like destruction. It smelled like justice being prepared with federal precision. My hands shook as I realized how close veteran families had come to dying in memorial garages, surrounded by memories of military service, while Diana collected insurance money on our corpses. The woman hadn't just planned theft. She'd planned genocide disguised as accident. But her criminal overconfidence had destroyed her own operation. Every planted accelerant became federal evidence. Every bribery attempt created additional terrorism charges. Every veteran she'd tried to eliminate was now cooperating with federal prosecutors who specialized in maximum sentences for crimes against American heroes. The soft hum of federal surveillance equipment mixed with distant sounds of military law enforcement agencies coordinating dawn raids that would end Diana's reign of terror permanently. Sarah always said that good engineering wasn't just about building things that lasted. Sometimes it was about dismantling things that threatened everything you'd built to protect. Tomorrow morning, domestic terrorist Dana Wilkins would discover that attempting genocide against American veterans carried consequences she'd never imagined in her most criminal nightmares. The explosion at 0247 hours ripped me from dreams of Sarah into a nightmare that would haunt Dana Wilkins for the rest of her federal supermax sentence. I was staying in Frank's guest room, my own garage no longer safe after yesterday's terrorism preparation, when the blast shook windows throughout the veteran community. Through Frank's bedroom window, I watched 22 years of memories erupt into flames that turned night into hellish orange warfare. Sarah's memorial garage, our sanctuary, the workshop where we'd planned to spend retirement surrounded by American muscle and shared dreams. The memorial wall where my Purple Heart hung beside her favorite photographs. The workbench where I'd promised to restore the Camaro she'd helped me choose. All of it disappearing into smoke and federal evidence. The fire was so intense that Colorado Springs Fire had to establish a 4-block perimeter around veteran properties. Professional arsonists had turned my memorial into controlled demolition disguised as PTSD malfunction, using techniques that guaranteed maximum destruction and optimal terrorism timing. But Diana's criminal overconfidence had just created the most beautiful trap in federal prosecution history. I stood on Frank's porch in my Army PT shirt, watching our life burn while federal arson investigator Marcus Webb coordinated a crime scene that looked like domestic warfare against American veterans. "Tank, this wasn't random," he said grimly, thermal imaging revealing accelerant patterns that formed perfect destruction highways through veteran memorials. Someone wanted veteran families dead and wanted it to look accidental. The evidence was overwhelming and perfectly preserved. My security system had survived in military specification fireproof housing, capturing every criminal second. Mountain Peak's crew entering at 0230 hours, followed by Diana's husband carrying professional terrorism equipment at 0240 hours. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Insurance investigator Jennifer Park discovered that Diana had filed preliminary damage claims for fires spreading through veteran community properties at 0145 hours, 62 minutes before my garage was actually ignited. She submitted paperwork claiming multiple veteran properties would suffer fire damage before your garage was even burning, Park explained with prosecutorial satisfaction. That's not prediction, that's documentary evidence of premeditated domestic terrorism against military families. The veteran community response was immediate and overwhelming. Neighbors appeared with coffee, blankets, and righteous fury that made federal agents take detailed notes. Frank grabbed my shoulders with tears streaming. "Brother, she tried to kill you. We all saw her planning this genocide." Then came the moment that would live forever in federal prosecution legend. Diana actually showed up at the terrorism scene. The woman appeared in designer athleisure and full makeup at 0430 hours, expressing deep community concern to news cameras while standing 75 feet from the veteran memorial she'd just had torched. Her performance was Academy Award caliber in its complete sociopathic detachment from reality. This tragic accident reinforces why our community must maintain strict oversight of veteran activities, she told Channel 13 with theatrical grief. Master Sergeant Richardson's military hoarding and PTSD-related judgment issues may have contributed to this devastating threat to innocent families. What she didn't realize was that FBI domestic terrorism agents were recording every word for her eventual war crimes trial, while federal marshals were already preparing dawn arrest warrants based on evidence so overwhelming that plea bargains were mathematically impossible. The financial investigation revealed criminal genius wrapped in genocidal stupidity. Diana had embezzled $680,000 from veteran community funds to finance professional terrorism. Her insurance policies valued neighboring properties at $4.2 million, despite collective purchase prices of $800,000. The spreading fire damage she'd pre-filed would have triggered payouts exceeding some nations' defense budgets. But federal prosecutors had been monitoring every transaction since Pat's investigation began. Bank records showed payments to known domestic terrorists. Cell phone data placed both criminals at the scene during ignition. Insurance applications contained enough lies to guarantee terrorism convictions in federal court. Martinez's response was swift and biblical. Federal marshals arrested both criminals during dawn raids broadcast live on military news networks. Assets seized under domestic terrorism forfeiture would compensate veteran families from 6 states. Mountain Peak was liquidated faster than evidence in a document shredder. The charges were life sentence beautiful: attempted genocide of American veterans, first-degree domestic terrorism, insurance fraud across multiple jurisdictions, money laundering, criminal conspiracy targeting military families, and RICO violations that would keep them locked up until paleontologists discovered their skeletons. That evening, I sat in Frank's kitchen, surrounded by federal agents who'd traveled from multiple jurisdictions to coordinate the largest veteran-targeting terrorism prosecution in American history. The smoke smell still clung to my clothes, but it no longer smelled like destruction. It smelled like justice being prepared at maximum temperature. My garage was gone, but Sarah's memory lived in the veteran community that had protected me when her sanctuary couldn't. Diana had tried to commit genocide against American heroes in their sleep and ended up creating federal evidence that would keep her locked away until the Constitution crumbled. The soft sound of handcuffs clicking on news footage felt like Sarah whispering approval from whatever peaceful afterlife military spouses inhabit. Some battles were worth losing everything to win permanently. Tomorrow, domestic terrorist Dana Wilkins would discover that attempting genocide against American veterans carried consequences that lasted longer than federal life sentences. 7 days after my garage became a federal crime scene, Dana Wilkins walked into federal court in maximum security custody, orange jumpsuit replacing designer athleisure, facing domestic terrorism charges that would keep her locked up until archaeologists discovered her remains. The irony was so perfect it felt like Sarah had orchestrated it from military heaven. The federal courthouse was packed beyond capacity, standing room only, with overflow crowds of veterans watching live streams in the parking lot. Federal marshals, FBI domestic terrorism agents, insurance investigators, and military prosecutors from 6 states filled the gallery like an army of justice preparing for total warfare. Channel 13 had cameras positioned for maximum dramatic impact. The Colorado Attorney General sat in the front row taking notes for veteran protection legislation. Most beautifully, 47 veteran families Diana had terrorized were present as witnesses, including Frank Martinez, Bobby Chen with his Purple Heart, and Gold Star families who'd been driven from their homes by her systematic genocide campaigns. Federal Judge Patricia Morrison, a former JAG officer who'd agreed to handle the arraignment, called the court to order. With the gravity befitting a domestic terrorism case, the United States of America versus Dana Wilkins, also known as Diana Walsh, also known as Beth Martinez, also known as Lieutenant Colonel Diana Walsh, deceased. The list of stolen military identities took 90 seconds to read. The federal terrorism charges took 7 minutes. Attempted genocide of American veterans, first-degree domestic terrorism, insurance fraud across multiple states, money laundering, criminal conspiracy targeting military families, RICO violations, identity theft of deceased military personnel, stolen valor using KIA credentials, and systematic hate crimes against protected veteran communities. Diana's attorney, a federal public defender who'd clearly drawn the shortest straw in legal history, requested reasonable bond based on her community ties and lack of flight risk. Federal prosecutor Amanda Stevens stood with the satisfaction of someone holding royal flushes in a poker game against domestic terrorists. Your Honor, the defendant has operated under 11 false identities across 6 states while stealing over $8 million and destroying 47 veteran families. She attempted to commit genocide against decorated American heroes by burning down their memorial properties, then appeared on television claiming the victims had caused their own near-death experiences through PTSD-related negligence. The gallery murmured with righteous anger that made federal marshals shift nervously. Veterans don't tolerate attacks on their brothers and sisters. But the moment that would be replayed on military documentaries for decades came when Diana made the catastrophic decision to address the court directly. Your Honor, she said, turning toward me with the unbroken arrogance of a sociopath who still didn't understand the scope of her war crimes. Master Sergeant Richardson has used his veteran status to orchestrate a vendetta against law-abiding citizens exercising legitimate community oversight. He's weaponized the federal government against patriots trying to maintain neighborhood safety standards. This entire prosecution is military favoritism masquerading as justice. The silence in the federal courtroom was deafening. FBI agents exchanged glances that promised additional terrorism charges. Military prosecutors scribbled notes frantically. The veteran gallery held its collective breath, waiting for judicial response to this attack on American heroes. Judge Morrison's voice carried 25 years of military justice authority when she replied. Miss Wilkins, you stand accused of attempting to commit genocide against American veterans by burning down their memorial properties while they slept. You embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars from veteran community emergency funds. You operated under stolen identities of deceased military personnel while terrorizing families who served our nation. You filed fraudulent insurance claims totaling millions of dollars across multiple states targeting veteran communities. She paused, letting the weight of federal military justice settle over the courtroom like a burial flag. The evidence against you includes security footage of the domestic terrorism, recorded bribery attempts targeting federal investigators, documented genocide campaigns against protected veteran communities, financial records of systematic theft from military families, and insurance applications containing lies that constitute federal terrorism. The mic drop moment came when Morrison continued. Furthermore, this court has reviewed evidence that you've destroyed 47 veteran families and displaced over 200 military dependents through identical terrorism schemes. Your pattern of targeting Purple Heart recipients, Gold Star families, and disabled veterans constitutes systematic hate crimes that will be prosecuted as domestic terrorism against protected American heroes. Diana's face crumbled as the reality of federal supermax crashed through her sociopathic delusions. Her attorney whispered frantically about plea bargains that everyone knew were mathematically impossible given the overwhelming evidence of genocide against veterans. Bond is denied, Judge Morrison declared with finality that echoed through packed galleries of American heroes. The defendant poses an extreme flight risk and clear danger to veteran community safety. Remand to federal maximum security pending trial for domestic terrorism. The gallery erupted in applause that federal marshals didn't even attempt to suppress. Frank sobbed with relief that justice would be served. Bobby pumped his fist like his unit had completed a successful mission. 47 veteran families who'd been terrorized by Diana's criminal enterprise finally witnessed justice being served at maximum federal temperature. As federal marshals led Diana away in chains, she turned toward me one final time with hatred that could have powered military bases. "This isn't over, Sergeant. You'll never prove I specifically targeted veterans for genocide." The courtroom fell silent as I stood, wearing my dress blues with 22 years of ribbons and decorations, and delivered the words that would close this chapter of domestic terrorism forever. "Miss Wilkins, the court finds your confession that this was indeed targeted terrorism against American veterans to be duly noted for federal sentencing purposes. Military prosecutors now have documented admission of premeditated genocide. Thank you for eliminating any remaining reasonable doubt about your war crimes against American heroes." The sound of justice being served echoed through the federal courtroom like Sarah's final salute. 2 years later, I stood in my rebuilt memorial garage watching Cardinals feast at Sarah's memorial feeder, while federal supermax served Dana Wilkins her daily helping of justice. Life without parole in a concrete tomb where domestic terrorists contemplate their war crimes for eternity. The taste of morning coffee mixed with the sweet satisfaction of watching evil get exactly what it deserved from American justice. The federal terrorism trials had been prosecutors' dreams and defense attorneys' nightmares. Military juries took 4 hours and 23 minutes to convict both criminals on all counts. Apparently, they'd needed time for proper deliberation on genocide charges. Diana received life without parole for attempted genocide of American veterans, plus consecutive sentences for domestic terrorism, fraud, and hate crimes against military families that would keep her locked up until climate change turned Colorado into oceanfront property. Her husband earned 35 years for terrorism conspiracy, ensuring Mountain Peak's criminal enterprise was permanently extinct. The $4.8 million in seized assets had been distributed to veteran families across 6 states, creating the largest military community restitution in American legal history. Every targeted family received compensation plus punitive damages that established federal precedents protecting veteran communities nationwide from future domestic terrorists. But the real victory lived in Patriot Hill's transformation from terrorized community to model veteran sanctuary that military academies now studied. Frank Martinez reigned as unanimously elected community leader, implementing transparency measures that made embezzlement impossible and veteran protections guaranteeing respect for military service. Our reformed community charter required veteran approval for any decisions affecting military families, monthly financial reports published online, and mandatory mediation before any actions impacting service members. Most beautifully, targeting veterans based on military service, disabilities, or memorial displays was explicitly prohibited with automatic federal prosecution for violating community members. The ripple effects had spread like wildfire through American veteran communities. Colorado's Veteran Community Protection Act required complete financial transparency, prohibited harassment of military families, and established federal oversight for communities with systematic veteran complaint patterns. 23 other states adopted similar legislation, protecting millions of veteran families from future Dana Wilkins, while their inspiration rotted in federal supermax. The Master Sergeant Sarah Richardson Memorial Scholarship had grown beyond our wildest dreams. Documentary rights, book sales, and donations from grateful veteran communities had raised $1.2 million supporting military children studying engineering and law. This year's star recipient was Maria Chen, daughter of Bobby's unit medic, now heading to West Point with dreams of protecting veteran communities through military law. Our annual Patriot Hills Freedom Festival drew thousands, celebrating veteran triumph over domestic terrorism. Local businesses donated proceeds to legal defense funds helping other military communities fight corruption. Frank's Veterans Band headlined, while Pat Donnelly ran packed workshops on financial crime investigation that had helped veteran communities in 31 states identify and prosecute targeting schemes. The festival combined celebration with education through our Veteran Resource Center, helping military communities recognize terrorism patterns, document hate crimes, and coordinate federal investigations. 73 copycat criminals had been arrested using our model, saving thousands of veteran families from Diana's fate. My federal testimony had earned national recognition for maintaining honor under extreme pressure, leading to speaking engagements at military academies about protecting veteran communities while preserving federal justice. The Veterans of Foreign Wars created the Richardson Award, recognizing service members who demonstrated courage defending military families against systematic oppression. But personal victory meant more than professional recognition. My restored garage operated as a community workshop where veterans restored classic cars together, sharing skills and supporting each other's projects. Sarah's memorial garden bloomed more magnificently than ever, her roses thriving in soil enriched by veteran solidarity and protected by security ensuring no future terrorism. This evening, Golden Sunset streamed through new windows as I reviewed scholarship applications while supervising Bobby's work on his 1970 Challenger. Outside, Pat tended her victory garden, Frank taught neighborhood children harmonica, and veteran families gathered for conversations that Diana's reign of terror had once made impossible. The gentle sound of American muscle engines had replaced sirens and confrontation, proving justice wasn't just punishment, it was protection, healing, and hope for futures free from domestic terrorists. Here's my message for any veteran battling HOA nightmares or civilian tyrants with measuring tapes. Document everything. Organize your brothers and sisters. And remember that terrorists only win when American heroes stay silent. Your horror story could become someone else's salvation. Drop a comment sharing your own HOA nightmare. You're definitely not alone in fighting these suburban dictators who think they can intimidate American veterans. And smash that subscribe button for more veteran justice stories, because next week we're destroying the contractor who tried stealing an entire military community's emergency funds for personal profit. That revenge was equally biblical, and the federal charges were absolutely beautiful. Together we're building veteran communities where justice wins and terrorists lose permanently. That's a promise from one American hero to another. That's a wrap for today's episode on veteran justice. If you enjoyed watching Karma demolish domestic terrorism, smash that like button, comment your thoughts, and let us know if you've dealt with anti-veteran discrimination too. Subscribe so you won't miss the next terrorist meltdown we post. Stay strong, brothers and sisters.